from the beginning. Okay. All right. So, okay. Here we go. All right. So let's begin again since we had that technical difficulties. So we want to start by just settling in, getting the mind and body together in the same place. Konsanda Sankarab Shiri Sen Pamakaraji Pani Shuna Susuna Nata Tinka Saso Ketaramanam Sword. Omichiki, keep out on it to some singing again on air and some chicken soon to say about so in a mission close. What? All right. Now we want to begin with our bodhicitta motivation. Before I launch into this, I want to ask the people who are watching to please let me know if that happens again, that you can't see it, so that, I'm not just talking into the void. Okay. So bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word meaning awakened mind heart, and it's meant for the benefit of all mother sentient beings. It begins with compassion. It begins with compassion. Ordinary compassion, which all of us have. Though there are certainly some beings who seem to not have it, they do actually have it. But it's more than just compassion. So compassion is when we see someone suffering and we don't want them to suffer. And at the very least, we have that feeling of, I don't want them to suffer. And the next step is, what can I do to help them not suffer like this, right? That's compassion, and it's a beautiful thing, and we should really strive to increase it as much as possible. Bodhicitta begins there, but it includes the determination. So it includes, like, out of compassion, we want to attain enlightenment because we want, that is the way to address the cause of the suffering that we're seeing or in others or experiencing ourselves, right? So in order to remove that cause, which is ma rigpa, or fundamental ignorance about the nature of reality, meaning the nature of the so-called I, right? And outer phenomena. They sometimes call that inner and outer phenomena. Okay. What is the true nature of those things? Not knowing that is what causes the suffering ultimately. In order to eradicate that cause, then we need to attain enlightenment. So that we try to have that as our motivation for whatever kind of virtuous, positive thing that we do. And whether it's, bringing someone a glass of water or volunteering, donating money, whatever it is. And, but particularly when we are approaching the Dharma, doing anything related to the Dharma, like practicing, studying, etc., it's particularly powerful. So we really want to have bodhicitta as our motivation. Okay. So please take a moment and just try to make that a reality for yourself, whether you're Buddhist or not. At the very least, we can think, may the time that we spend together this morning benefit not only ourselves, but others as well. Okay. So today I want to discuss death awareness. There are four main streams of suffering in the human realm, according to the Buddha. Those are birth, which might be surprising. I'll explain that in a minute. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. Okay. So go through those just very briefly, and then we'll talk about death. So birth is considered suffering for several reasons, one of which is um, just the physical discomfort of both the mother and the baby. Um, in utero, the baby actually has a lot of experiences, and they give some details in the teachings, like baby feels like they're falling off a cliff when the mother stands up quickly, or the baby feels like, I don't know, like they're freezing when she drinks something very cold. And we know from this is scientific that, the mother's environment, her uh, emotional state, what she puts in her body, all of those things affect the baby. Okay. And of course, we know the mother also suffers being pregnant, even for women who, really want to be pregnant and, are very happy about being pregnant. There's no denying there's a lot of suffering involved there, right? Physical suffering, hormonal changes, being tired, all kinds of things like that. Then the birth process itself is quite really dangerous, actually, for both the mother and the child. In the teachings, it says they both kind of enter the jaws of death. It's really dangerous. Um, uh, um, so there's that. That's why it's suffering also. And then the process of birth, right? Going through labor. We all know it's very painful typically for the mother, but it's also really uncomfortable and painful for the baby. To be squeezed out through this really small hole is difficult for them. And then they go into more details about, how sensitive the baby's skin is and so forth. So there's that kind of like physical discomfort that comes with, and life risk that comes with childbirth, but also just the fact that if there's a baby, that person is still in cyclic existence. So that's also kind of suffering in that regard. And then old age, for those of us who are older, the sufferings of old age are really clear and becoming increasingly clear with every passing day. For those of us who are younger, it might not seem like such a big deal, right? It might seem like, I don't know what these people are complaining about with old age. Um, but it's really a lot of suffering and it's constant. It's not like, like when you're young, of course, everyone has experienced sickness, which is the third of these four types of suffering. Um, Imagine being like a little bit sick all the time, right? All the time, a little bit sick. That's a little bit like old age, okay? You have a hard time walking, moving, standing, eating, digesting, thinking, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, all of those things, right, start to degenerate. And like, mm, I'm 62, almost 63. And, I really have seen a lot of these changes in the last few years. Yeah. My hearing is declining. Every year I need new glasses, right? This kind of stuff. And again, that you might think, I can handle that. It's not a big deal. Mm, But it's more than that. Yeah. It's the diseases that start to arise, some of which can be quite serious. It's the other things that come with old age, like loneliness. Yeah. Not being, and then this is outlined in the teachings. Yeah. Not being taken seriously by people anymore. Right. Especially in modern times. At least in the past, the elders were respected for their wisdom and they were sought out for their wisdom and they were given a value. They had like a value in society. And in our society, and I'm talking as a, 21st century American craziness, uh, it's not valued, you know. N- and people are rejected and they're put into homes and they're just living in their home alone and getting meals on wheels or in the hospital. I mean, it's just terrible. It's really a lot of suffering that comes with old age. And then sickness, we're all familiar with that. Even a small sickness like having the flu, and then, larger life threatening illnesses, and then death, which is what we're going to be discussing today. So, death is considered suffering again in the obvious ways, right? That we know. There's obvious sufferings that come with death. For the dying person, they have to say goodbye to their entire life, right? Their identity, their every single member of their family, all of their friends, all of their possessions, their very identity, right? That is suffering. Then there's often, not always, but often physical pain that comes with death that, medicines can only do so much for. And then there's the suffering of those left behind who have to lose that person, right? We have to say goodbye to that person. It's And then the grief that comes afterwards, right? So there's tremendous amount of suffering that comes with death. But in this path, um, there is a um, hang on, I just realized I didn't put this microphone in so you can hear me better. Um, can you hear me okay now? Can somebody put in the chat if you can hear me? Mhm. Please put in the chat if you can hear me, baby. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Brian. Okay, good. So in Buddhism, there are ways of dealing with this process that we all have to face, right? And that we normally are not thinking about. Okay. Um, there's just the teachings on the death process, like what we can expect when we're dying, during the process of dying, and then what happens after death. Okay. This is outlined in great detail in the teachings, which is extraordinarily helpful for ourselves so we can see, we can, have some idea what's going on, and we don't need to add the suffering of anxiety and kind of freaking out because we don't understand what's happening, because we've had those teachings. Okay, this is what's happening. I'm experiencing this because XYZ. Okay. And if we study those teachings on the process of death, we can help others too. Even if they're not Buddhist, we can help them through our understanding of the dying process. Okay. So let me give you an example of what I mean by when I say that. So um, when we die, um, well, the idea is that, there's essentially five elements, right? Earth, air, fire, water, and heat. Okay. And when we begin the process of dying, each one of those elements starts to dissolve one by one, I believe, beginning with the earth element. And there are things that happen both externally, like things that we can see as the person who's not dying, and things that the dying person experiences, that are very specific to these stages of dissolution of the body and the moving on of the consciousness. So one of those early signs is that the dying person starts to feel like they're falling. They start to feel like they're falling, or sometimes they feel like they're being crushed by something, and they want more pillows. They start to ask for more pillows. Even if they can't speak, they'll start to indicate like they're not comfortable, they want to sit up, they want to get up. So that's not happening, right? They're not falling, but that's their experience. So I'm giving you this example because it really helped when I went to with my mother, went to help her brother. die, or went to visit them, let's say. Let's not make it more than it is. Went to visit them when he was dying. And, he's a Christian, so I'm not going to try to convert him or anything. We should never do that, by the way. Never, ever do that, even maybe especially when someone's on their deathbed. It's massively disrespectful and will also cause them more stress in an already really stressful situation. However, we can use the teachings in a non religious way, for lack of a better word. So, I'll give you this example. Okay, so my uncle was dying, and he was already at the point of like he couldn't speak, and had started the process of what's called actively dying. Okay, and I noticed that he was doing that. He was becoming very agitated. He wanted more and more pillows. He was just like, he looked confused and was trying to sit up and all this stuff. And I just said to him, "Oh, please don't worry. You're not falling. You're not being crushed. It's just the way your body's changing in this process of dying makes you feel that way. But actually, you're okay. It's completely normal that you're experiencing this." He relaxed immediately. Immediately. He just was like, "Oh, okay," you know, and completely relaxed. What a giant help that is, right? That's an incredible benefit to someone who's dying, to be able to bring them some sense of peace and relaxation in that process, you know? So this is how just studying these stages of dying can be so helpful for ourselves and for others. Okay. So, um, so there's that, and that type of teaching in relation to the dying process or death and dying. But then there's like the things that we study, or not study, but things that we, well, first study and then contemplate going forward, right? Like on a day-to-day basis. Okay. And one of those things is impermanence. It's actually usually paired. It's usually impermanence and death. They usually pair those things together. So, literally every day, as part of our daily practice, we contemplate what's called the four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, which uh, I just did a series on that in the last month or so. So, you can look up each one. Okay, so the first is precious human life, which briefly is outlines that is a life that is, I mean, all life is precious, but it's termed in this way, um, where we have a situation that allows us to practice. Okay, allows us um, to practice the Dharma and potentially become enlightened. Right. So that's precious human life. And the second is impermanence, impermanence and death. The third is the law of cause and effect, otherwise known as karma. And the fourth is suffering of cyclic existence. Okay. And I'm not going to go into details about that for obvious reasons. But if we are contemplating impermanence and death every day, it's going to help us when we're actually dying, right? Because we've already gotten used to that idea. Oh, I'm going to die one day. Even if we're not like 100% convinced, because somehow we're so, sometimes I just want to put all these things together that I talk about on a regular basis that show just how cuckoo bananas we all are. Okay. Anyway, we have no evidence that we're going to live forever. Everybody dies, dropping like flies all around us, and still we don't think we're going to die. We don't really believe we're going to die. Okay, which is completely illogical, but that's our basic feeling. So we need reminders of that. We need to be reminded, oh, I'm going to die one day. Oh, everything is impermanent. And I've talked a lot about impermanence in all these talks. Like I said, you can look at our history here on the channel. You can find all those talks. Um, but just to contemplate and be aware on a regular basis of impermanence, just ordinary impermanence, you know? I mean, last week it was snowing, yesterday it was 76 degrees, today it's raining, right? Just weather. Then our body changing, our friends changing, our house changing, things disintegrating, right? Every minute we take another step towards death. From the moment of conception, we start to die. Okay. But even if we don't think about death itself, just being aware of this ordinary types of impermanence. Oh, I broke my glasses. Oh, my phone needs to be recharged. No. Oh, my internet suddenly went out. Like this whole thing that we just experienced, right? Where I'm sitting here talking and nobody can hear me or see me, whatever, right? It's such a good example of death. I wasn't expecting that. You guys weren't expecting that. You know, everything looked fine. I had every reason to believe that everything was going to work great as soon as I sat down and started the live stream, but it didn't turn out that way. It's a great example, right? We are all of us, including myself, because I'm still working on this, assume that we'll be here tomorrow. We assume we'll be here tonight. We assume, oh yeah, tonight, whatever time I normally go to bed, I'm going to go to bed, tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to do XYZ. There's no guarantee of that whatsoever, right? And we assume, oh, my loved ones will be here, and my dog will be here, and my friends will be here, and my neighbors will be here, and my freaking house will be here. We don't know that. And we're all of us old enough to have experienced significant loss in our lives already. And yet we still assume, completely like convinced, you know, like there's no question. I didn't have a question. When I set up things this morning to do this, there was no question in my mind that it would work, and it didn't work, okay? So just getting familiar with, pardon me, these notions, ordinary no like, it's not an esoteric thing, impermanence. It's just an ordinary fact of life, right? But just to bring that to the forefront of our mind on a regular basis is going to be so helpful when we die. Uh, Surprisingly helpful when we die. Even if we don't, go very deep. And why I'm saying this because I'm thinking about when my father died. I had been practicing studying already for, I don't know, 15 years maybe, something like that. And I mean, I never did anything particularly special with these empowerments or teachings. I just repeated these, you know, I just repeated the practice every day, four thoughts, blah, 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 did the usual practice. But I was stunned by how helpful it was when my father started to pass away because I wasn't surprised, right? It wasn't, I mean, to be fair, in his case, he had been sick for a long time already. So, you know, there was already some sense of preparation, but still, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't surprised. In viewing him going through this process and caring for him during this process, I saw how true the teachings are and how incredibly helpful the teachings are. And in that case, I could help because I was calm in the face of what was happening and I was like grounded because of the teachings. Not only did I suffer less, but I could be more aware, more like completely present for him because I wasn't freaking out. And because I could be present and aware in that situation, I could help everyone in my family as they knew there's one person there who's not freaking out, right? Who's like calm. And so I could help my mom, I could help my dad, my siblings, the whole structure of how things were going because we were caring for him at home with hospice. Just by reminding myself, not because I attained some kind of great realization, but just years of daily reminding myself death and impermanence are a thing. Okay. The other important thing, I mean, there's so much to say about death and dying in this tradition, but and you should study it. You know, there's some really good books out there. Still, Sogyal Rinpoche's book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, is really stellar. It's very, very good. Um, and you can look on our website under resources, meditation resources, I think. Hang on, let me pull that up. Oh, it's making me okay. Hang on. I just want to make sure I have the right thing to tell you. Yeah, under resources says meditation resources and recommended reading. If you click on that, recommended reading, you'll see a whole list of books with all the different subjects like divided up like that. And there's a section there for death and dying. And we'll probably do another course on it at some point. Um, so, um, death as suffering, um, contemplation of impermanence and death throughout our life, being able to help us. You know, we like Shantideva says in his text about like learning to, of course, he puts it in a more eloquent way, but essentially he says learning to deal with small things helps us to deal with larger things. So if we can get ourselves used to the ordinary changes in our life, like getting older, or things breaking, or things not going the way that we want, the more we practice with these small things, the better we're going to be able to handle the big things like dying. Okay. So another thing that we need to consider is that death is not the end. All right. It's very frightening for most people because there's a great sense of uncertainty there, and we are leaving everything behind, and completely changing our body. Um, Going into the unknown, okay? Those things, and then also dealing with some measure of pain, sometimes. Uh, all of that is very, challenging, um, but it's not the end. The understanding in Vajrayana Buddhism, or Tibetan Buddhism, if you will, is that we go through this, we're dying every moment. You have one of the books that's not on that list is a book by Zonzar Khyentse Rinpoche called Living is Dying. I have to update that list at some point, but just remember Living is Dying, and you'll find that, and it'll be there. Um, so we go through, you know, every millisecond, actually, we're dying. And then we go through the like actively dying process, like I just was talking about earlier. And then the consciousness finally leaves the body and enters a state of being called the bardo, Bardo, or the intermediate state. Okay. And that in that period, which usually lasts 49 uh, days in our measure of time, uh, the we experience actually usually quite a lot of fear and panic because we don't have a body, and but we have like in the first we have I don't know how much I want to go into this, but we have what's called a mental body, which is like the body we have when we're dreaming, right? When we're dreaming, are um, we are picturing ourselves. Yeah, I'm flying, I'm talking, I'm running, whatever it is. Yeah, that's the mental body. Our actual physical body is just laying in the bed. So we have this mental body, and that's, let's say, 7 weeks, right? The first half of that, we're more connected with the life that we just left. Second half of that, we're more connected with the life that we're gonna take. Okay, and this is again a huge subject, but that's the Bardo. And then when the conditions come together, we take birth. We take another body. We And that can be a human body, animal, or one of other four realms. Okay. And this is an experience. It's a mental experience. It's a perception. Okay. And again, and we don't have time to go into all those details, but I encourage you to read about it, study about it. And if we do another class on that, to join the class or the retreat or whatever. So it's not the end, is the point. Okay. We go through this period of 7 weeks, and then typically it would take birth in either as a human or in some other form, depending on our karma. Okay. Our consciousness continues just the way it continues in this life. It's just our form is different. So again, big subject, not enough time. Essential point is death is not the end. Okay. Death is not the end. Especially in relation to whatever kind of Dharma practice we've done in this life, we need to remember that that is coming with us into the next life. We don't lose the progress that we made as far as progressing on the path. So, understanding these things can really bring some peace of mind to us when we're dying. Okay. Um, and that is one of the most helpful things that we can experience. That one of the most helpful things to aid us during this really difficult process. So we have, you know, two components here. We have like ourselves, if we're the ones dying, and then we have those who are trying to help, hopefully trying to help the person who's dying. Okay. Um, and that is a really important factor as well. How we, various ways that we can help or hinder, various ways we can help or harm, really, if we're not careful. So, one of the most kind of fundamental um, things that we should keep in mind is that um, the person who is dying needs to be the priority, which may sound obvious, but um, a lot of times, because the person who's losing that person, so the person who's not dying, um, can be understandably so, very emotional, crying a lot, begging the person not to go, all these kind of things, very hard for the dying person. Okay. Christine Longacre, who's a student of Sogyal Rinpoche, talks about this in one of her books. I don't know the book, but she says, imagine that you're on a ship that's you have to go to another country, let's say, and you have no choice. You have to go. You're on the ship, and the ship is pulling away from the shore, and you see all your friends and family on the shore crying and wailing and rending of garments and screaming, "No, no, don't go, oh my God, don't leave me alone, I'm gonna miss you so much, oh my God, please don't die, please don't go," in this case, right? How would you feel? How would you feel in that situation? I would feel terrible. It's like, I don't have a choice, like, I have to go, you know? This is not in my control. So versus same scenario, but your friends and family are on the shore going, "Please have a good journey. I love you so much. Thank you for being in my life, but I understand you have to go." You're going to feel so much better. You're going to feel, as the dying person, the person who has to leave, so much more peaceful and relaxed and able to attend to the process rather than in distress because your family is so distressed. Okay. Of course, we're going to be sad losing someone. So the teachings don't say don't be sad about it. It's just saying think about that person first. And like, yes, we're losing them, but they're losing everyone. They're losing every person in their life, all of their possessions, their very identity, etc. It's much harder for them than it is for us. So we need to make them the priority. Okay. The other thing is to, make the environment as peaceful as possible, as quiet and as peaceful as possible. All right. So that means, the things people do around a dying person. Oh my gosh. It's so, people standing and like people who told me they saw this with their own eyes, m- somebody in the hospital, say grandma in the hospital, one of her children here on this side of the bed, another person on this side of the bed, and arguing over her. No, I get the house. No, I get the house. No, I want this thing. No, I want that. Over her. Come on. So if we see that kind of situation and we're trying to care for this person who's dying, we need to figure out a way to get those people out of the room, right? And just suggest to them, hey, why don't we have this? Let's go to the cafeteria and have a coffee and we can discuss it there. This kind of thing. Yeah. And to respect the dying person's own wishes, both during and after their process, both during and after death. So that means, it was so funny, like, well, not that funny, but when my mom was dying, okay, I'm Buddhist, she was Catholic, and most of my siblings are some form of Christianity. Okay. And they're just standing around, and I'm like, don't you guys want to say the rosary? Like, I know my mom would be really happy if you could say the rosary with her. It didn't even occur to them, you know? It didn't even occur to them. So, respecting the person's spiritual beliefs or lack thereof, um, respecting their wishes, maybe they don't want Uncle Joe in the room. Then it's your job to keep Uncle Joe out, you know? Maybe they want a Buddhist ceremony, maybe they want a Christian ceremony, maybe they want, one of our Dharma friends was talking about how, her family is like really Catholic. And she's like, yeah, I want them to have a Catholic mass, sure, absolutely. Which is very kind and very generous. And, I grew up in a funeral home. And, my dad always told us, like, the funeral is for the living. It's really not for the dead person. It's for the living so they can have support, so they can have all their friends and family come and support them during this really difficult time. So we should remember that too. And then after death, if this person has said, I want my house to go to Tommy and I want my car to go to Carol and I want, we should follow those directions as much and as closely as possible. Okay. Um, in that same vein, then we want to prepare as much as possible ourselves, yeah, to write a will, to have advanced power of attorney, to, you know, make it very clear what we want uh, during and after we die. Okay. There are some books out there that can help you with that. Is a Buddhist group that I can't remember what it's called right now, but there's someone who does like regular seminars on dying and preparing to die, and there's other books out there that kind of give us the practical and spiritual advice. So what I mean by that is we can pre-plan our funeral, we can um, create a team, of people like we don't know how we're going to die, right? We might die in 1 second in a car or have a brain aneurysm or whatever, or we might have a longer death process. Okay. The latter is actually preferable. honestly. A lot of people say, "I just wanna die quick, just get it over fast," but it's hard if you do that, actually. It's really hard. It can be really hard to even realize that you died, right? If you let's say you get in a car accident, very hard for people to sort of like it's just 1 second to the next, you're alive, boom, you're dead. Really hard for people to accept that and figure things out, and it's very distressing for the consciousness of that person to be like, what happened, you know? And you don't get a chance to tie up loose ends, to say goodbye, to figure out a process, to work, to practice with that. All that stuff is lost if you have a sudden death. But if you have a longer death, although in many ways it's more suffering, but at the same time you have an opportunity to mentally prepare. Okay, this is going to happen. Okay, this is happening soon. And your family can prepare and you can do all those things, right? But we we do not only ourselves but our loved ones a huge favor if we can prepare as much as possible beforehand. So that means, like I said, writing a will, getting a healthcare power of attorney, pre-planning your funeral. You can go to a funeral home of your choice and do everything in advance, and you even pay for it in advance, and the price never goes up. I think this is just a great idea. You know, the if you go and pre-plan your funeral and you pay whatever it is now, but you don't die for another 20 years, they don't charge you extra because it's double the price in 20 years. You've paid for it, it's done. And you've chosen the casket, and you've chosen the service, and you've chosen the songs, and you've chosen all the things. It's such a gift for your family. Usually what happens is people don't prepare. And then in the midst of this chaotic, extraordinarily painful grief, when you haven't slept in days or whatever, you're supposed to make all these decisions, right? It's really hard, so difficult. And then you go to the funeral home, and it's like for a lot of people, like a horror show, you're like, what? I have to look at caskets? What are you talking about? And I'm so, like, proud of my dad, who has, passed away many years ago, but, he was so good at this, and he was so honest, and he never ripped anybody off, quite the contrary. He would give people, huge discounts, or if a child died, like, I think he didn't charge for anything. I don't remember, I have to double check that, but, he might have, at the very least, gave a major discount for things like that, and he experienced that too, so, but a lot of funeral directors will take advantage of the vulnerability of grieving people and, take them for everything they've got. "Oh, I know your Uncle Joe would have really wanted the most expensive casket that there is." So if you go in there as a living person and you make all your own choices, all your family member has to do is walk in the funeral home, sign a paper, and it's done. And they know that you got what you wanted. Rather than, I don't know, would they wanna be have a service in church? I don't know, would they want this? I don't know, adding so much stress to our already stressful situation. So I really, really encourage you to do that as well, even if you're very young, because we don't know when we're gonna die, right? We have no idea. So I'm gonna stop here. Um, I just again, just, like, really wanna encourage you to do a few things. One is to all the time as much as possible, really pay attention to impermanence. And get used to impermanence. Pay attention to death, right? Every change is actually a kind of death, you know? Winter dies into spring, spring dies into summer, you know? Mm, every moment, every time we change anything in our life, it's a kind of death. So, and then regular death, right? Want to pay attention to that too, so we can get out of this fogginess, this dull ignorance of believing that we're not going to die. You know, we can think about all the people that we know who have died. And this is part of the contemplative when we do an analytical meditation on this, which we're going to do now. Okay. All right. So I'm going to, all right. So I'm sorry, impermanence um, and preparing yourself for death, like learning as much as possible and doing all these practical things can really, really help. And then studying more the teachings on death, dying, and beyond is going to really benefit you and also help you to help others. Okay. All right. So we're going to do this again from How to Meditate. I'm going to do this contemplation, death awareness meditation, which is chapter 4. So let's begin first by just settling in again and bringing the mind to the breath. Okay. So we're going to set our motivation for this practice. Can think, may this meditation help bring about greater peace and happiness for all beings? Or may this meditation be a cause for me, pardon me, to become enlightened so I can help all beings become free from suffering and become enlightened as well. So now contemplate the following points, bringing in your own experiences and insights, as well as things you've heard and read. Try to feel every point deeply. Remember, well, this is if you have a lot of time, so I'm not going to say that. Okay, so the first point is the inevitability of death. We plan many activities and projects for the coming days, months, and years. Although death is the only event that is certain to occur, we don't usually think about it or plan for it. Even if the thought of death does arise in our mind, we usually push it away quickly. We don't want to think about death, but it's important to think about and be prepared for it. Contemplate the following 3 points to get a sense that death is definitely going to happen to you. Point 1, everyone has to die. To generate an experience of death's inevitability, first bring to mind people from the past, famous rulers and writers, musicians, scientists, criminals, and ordinary people. These people were once alive. They worked, thought, and wrote. They loved and fought, enjoyed life, and suffered, and finally they died. Is there anyone who ever lived who did not have to die? No matter how wise, wealthy, powerful, or popular a person may be, their life must come to an end. The same is true for all other living creatures. For all the advances in science and medicine, no one has found a cure for death, and no one ever will. Now bring to mind people you know who have already died. And think of the people you know who are still alive. Contemplate that every one of these people will die, and so will you. There are several billion people on the planet right now, but 100 years from now, all these people, with the exception of a few who are now very young, will be gone. You yourself will be dead. Try to experience this fact with your entire being. Point two, your lifespan is decreasing continuously. Time never stands still, it is continuously passing. Seconds become minutes, minutes become hours, hours become days, days become years. And as time is passing in this way, you travel closer and closer towards death. Imagine an hourglass with the sand running into the bottom. The time you have to live is like the grains of sand continuously running out. Hold your awareness for a while on the experience of this uninterrupted flow of time carrying you to the end of your life. Number three, the amount of time spent during your life to develop your mind is very small. So here, when she says develop your mind, she means practicing, studying, contemplating, practicing. Given that the mind alone continues after death, the only thing that will be of any value when you die is the positive and constructive energy you have created during your life. But how much time do you actually devote to understanding your mind, being kind to others, developing wisdom and compassion? In an average day, how many hours do you sleep? How many hours do you work? How many hours do you spend preparing food, eating, socializing? How much time do you spend feeling depressed, frustrated, bored, angry, resentful, jealous, lazy, or critical? And finally, how much time do you spend consciously trying to improve your state of mind? Do these calculations honestly. Assess your life in this practical way to see clearly just how much of your time is spent doing things that truly benefit yourself and others. And that will be helpful for your mind at the time of death and in the next life. By meditating on these first 3 points, you should be able to develop the determination to use your life wisely and mindfully. Okay. The second major point is the uncertainty of the time of death. By contemplating these first 3 previous points, you come to accept that you are definitely going to die. But you might think that death is not going to happen for a long time. Why do you think this way? Is there any way you can know for sure when death will happen? Contemplate the following 3 points to get a sense of how the time of death is completely uncertain and unknown. I'm going to pause here for 1 second just to make a comment. So, this is the blessings of age, right? We talked earlier about the suffering of old age, right? But the blessings or the advantage of aging is that this truth of impermanence and the proximity of death becomes very evident, much more so than when we're young and healthy. Okay. So sometimes people come to me and they are a bit sad or despondent about, coming into the Dharma later in life. But I always say the same thing and I firmly believe it. You're in some ways, like, it's such an advantage in because, like, first, what I just said, like, impermanence is like, boom, right there. It's more and more obvious the older that you get. But also, like, the understanding of suffering, of cyclic existence is very clear, you know, much more clear than when we're young and healthy and everything's great for the most part, right? We have a visceral experience of impermanence, of the suffering of samsara, of how our positive decisions and actions in this life brought us happiness, and how our negative actions and so forth brought us suffering. A lot of times we don't need to wait for the next life. We can see it in this life, you know. So our life experience is a great advantage when practicing the Dharma. So please keep that in mind. Okay. So back to the uncertainty of the time of death. Human life expectancy is uncertain. This is the first of these subpoints. If human beings died at a specific age, say 88, we would have plenty of time and space to prepare for death. But there's no such certainty, and death catches most of us by surprise. Life can end at any point, at birth, in childhood, in adolescence, at the age of 22 or 35 or 50 or 94. Think of the examples of people you know or have heard of who died before they reached the age that you are now. That's wild. Being young and healthy is no guarantee that a person will have a long time. Children sometimes die before their parents. Healthy people can die before those who are suffering from a terminal illness. We can hope to live until we are 70 or 80, but we cannot be certain of doing so. We can't be certain that we will not die later today. It's very difficult to feel convinced that death could happen at any moment. We tend to feel that since we've survived so far, our continuation is secure. But thousands of people die every day, and few of them expect it to. So many examples of that, right? Like one of the most kind of jarring examples of that that always comes to mind when I read about this or think about this is 9/11. I can guarantee every person who walked into those buildings assumed they were going to walk out in the evening and rejoin their families. Every single person. Not a single person in that. I mean, of course, I can't know for sure, but come on. You went to work on a sunny September morning, you know, feeling everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be just like it has always been. After work, I'm going to go home, going to have dinner, going to do this and that. Tomorrow, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And boom, dead. It's crazy, you know? It's crazy. And we don't know. We don't know. You know, that's like an extreme example. It doesn't happen every day, right? But we don't know, like, where our heart is at right now, that we could just have a heart attack. We don't know if there's a brain aneurysm just waiting to pop, right? No matter what our age is. So it is really worth considering. Okay. Generate a strong feeling of the complete uncertainty of your own time of death, how there simply is no guarantee that you have long to live. Right? So the next point, there are many causes of death. That's the next point. You sort of have like three main points and then subpoints. So this is the next subpoint. There are many causes of death. There are many different ways that death happens to people. Sometimes it happens due to external causes, like natural disasters, or accidents like car or plane crashes. People can also be killed by other people, etc. Death can also happen due to internal causes. There are hundreds of different diseases that can rob us of our health and lead to death. There are also cases of people who aren't ill, but something goes wrong in their bodies and they suddenly die in their sleep or while walking around. And then there's old age. And unless you die before that, no one escapes that, right? They say like, I really like that saying, like everybody wants to live forever, but nobody wants to get old. Okay. Even things, and this is also really interesting, even things that normally support life can become the cause of death. Food, for example. We need that to survive. but it can sometimes lead to death, like if we choke or eat, contaminated food, this kind of thing. Medicine normally supports life, but sometimes people take the wrong medicine or the wrong dose. Or you have this situation in, modern medicine where old people have, 20 different prescription medicines they're taking that I know this happened to my grandmother. So many different types of medications, and there was really a sense that the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and nobody was really paying attention to how these things would, interact. And I found that even in my own case. One doctor prescribes me something, another doctor is like, "No, that's really bad for what you have. You shouldn't be taking that." Thank you. Okay, so um, houses and apartments that support us, right? Support our life, can catch fire or collapse, killing people inside. People die in their sleep, in the womb, coming home from work, going to school, etc. Death can occur at any time in any situation. Bring to mind cases of people you know or have heard of who have died, and think of how they died. Think that any of these things could happen to you as well. I saw a video yesterday of police body cam footage of them pulling over a young couple in their 20s for speeding. And it was the boy was driving. It was their first date. And he was going 100 miles an hour in a residential area. So speed limit was maximum 35, right? And he's going 100 miles an hour. He went through a red light, almost hit somebody on a bike, and finally the cop pulled him over. Gave him 3 tickets for these things. And, told him like cops do, slow down, this is really dangerous, etc. And this couple drove off. Within minutes, they crashed. And they crashed into the side of a truck, and the car went like under the truck and just sort of cut the car in half from the top. So you can imagine what happened to their bodies. And this same cop was called to that scene, and he was, totally shocked. It was just, I just pulled them over and told them to slow down. And this kid was going 124 miles an hour in this same neighborhood and just hit a truck. And the truck was pulling out. So death can happen like that. All right, the next point, the human body is very fragile. Next subpoint, the human body is very fragile, which is true. It's crazy how fragile. I can't believe anybody lives through a single day, really. Our human body is very vulnerable. It can be injured or struck down by illness so easily. Within minutes, it can change from being strong and active to being helplessly weak and full of pain. Right now, you might feel healthy, energetic, and secure, but something as small as a virus or as insignificant as a thorn could drain your strength and lead to your death. Think about this. Recall the times you have hurt or injured your body and how easily it could happen again and even cause your death. People are afraid of flying, right? And I feel sorry for those people these days when planes are just falling out of the sky. But there, as everyone knows, I'm sure, there's far more car accidents than plane crashes. And we literally take our life into our own hands every time we get behind the wheel and drive, right? So easy to die. So easy. Your body won't last forever. In the course of your life, you might manage to avoid illness and accidents, but the years will eventually overtake you. Your body will degenerate, lose its beauty and vitality, and finally die. By meditating on the second set of 3 points, we develop the determination to begin our work of mind transformation right now, as the future is so uncertain. So the third of these major points is the fact that only spiritual insight can help you at the time of death. No matter how much we've acquired or developed throughout our life in terms of family and friends, wealth, experiences, and so on, none of it goes with us at death. Really important point, right? And we know this is it's sort of part of our cultural lexicon, right? You can't take it with you. Or, I like the saying, like, nobody ever saw how they nobody ever sees a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? I love that. So, um, only your stream of consciousness continues. That's the only thing. Body's gone, possessions gone, friends gone, work gone, identity gone, but our stream of consciousness and our karma comes with us, right? Only our stream of consciousness continues, carrying imprints of all that we have thought, felt, said, and done. It is vital that when we die, we have as many positive imprints, the cause of good experiences, and as few negative imprints, the cause of suffering, on our mind as possible. So, law of cause and effect. Also, we should aim to die at peace with ourselves, feeling good about how we lived our life, and not leaving behind any unresolved conflicts with people. It's a really good point, right? Especially since we don't know. Like, remember before when I was saying, could die suddenly or could die through a longer process, and that really having a longer process is beneficial in some ways. One of them being able to tie up those loose ends. But like, we don't know when we're going to die, right? We could die suddenly. There's no guarantee that we're going to have any time. So why don't we resolve these issues now, right? Instead of waiting until we're on our deathbed and then being like, oh, we should repair our relationship. No, don't, stupid. Do it now. The only things that will truly the only things that will truly benefit us at the time of death are positive states of mind, non-attachment, and calm acceptance of the changes that are taking place, loving kindness, compassion, patience, and wisdom. But in order to be able to have such states of mind at the time of death, we need to make ourselves familiar with them during the course of our life. So that's what I was talking about, right? If every day we're practicing, we're contemplating, oh yeah, everything is impermanent. I don't always get what I want. Things don't always go my way. Because that's a really big issue, actually, right? If we're someone who gets very angry and frustrated and or whatever emotional about things not going the way that we want them to, we're going to be in big trouble when we die, because that's the epitome of things not going the way we want, right? And in relation to that, even if we're very good about, we've made all the preparations like I was describing earlier. I want this funeral, I want my possessions to go here or there, I want to donate organs or not, all this stuff, right? Even if we do that and we say, I don't want this, I don't know, I don't want my ex-husband there when I'm dying. We can maybe make that kind of demand. There's no guarantee that anybody will care. And we might be in a situation where our ex-husband is there. If we can't handle that, we're going to be at a huge disadvantage at that point. So we need practice now, like dealing with whatever small frustrations we have in life or large problems that we have in life, trying to deal with those things with calm and um, openness and acceptance of reality and love and compassion and all those good things. The more we can do that now, the more we're going to be able to handle it at death. Okay. Um, okay. You can experience a strong feeling of this reality by contemplating the following three, so subpoints here, the following 3 points while visualizing yourself actually dying. So imagine that you are on your deathbed, okay, and you are in that process of dying. So the first of these subpoints is your loved ones cannot help. When you face difficult or frightening situations, your thoughts usually turn to loved ones. Maybe, depending on your family. But, sorry. When you face difficult or frightening situations, your thoughts usually turn to loved ones, your family and friends. So it's natural that you would wish them to be with you when you die. However, it's not certain they'll be there. You might die far from home. They might not come. They might have died before you. Okay. But even if they were present with you at the time of death, would they be able to help you? Although they love you very much and don't want you to die, they can't prevent this from happening. Also, chances are they wouldn't know what to say or do to give you peace of mind. Instead, their sadness and worry about the coming separation would probably stir up the same emotions in your mind. So, this directly relates to what I was saying earlier, right? How we can help the person who's dying. One of the best ways we can do that is to not become distressed and emotional and beg them not to go, this kind of thing. Of course, we're going to be sad. And the dying person knows you know, it's inevitable that when you lose a loved one, you're going to be sad. You're going to be sad to leave them. They're going to be sad to leave you. But there's a difference between, honey, I'm so sad to be losing you versus, please don't die. Don't do this to me. Don't leave. What am I going to do? How am I going to survive without you? Oh, it's so unhelpful. Please don't do that. Okay. Um, when we die, we go alone. No one, not even our closest, dearest loved one, can accompany us. And being unable to accept this and let go of our attachment to our loved ones will cause our mind to be in turmoil and make it very difficult to have a peaceful death. The next subpoint: your possessions and enjoyments cannot help. Your mind will probably also think of your possessions and property, which can occupy a great deal of your time while you're alive and are a source of much pleasure and satisfaction. But can any of these things bring you comfort and peace at the time of death? Your wealth may be able to provide you with a private room in a hospital and the best medical care, but that's all it can do for you. It can't stop death from happening. And when you die, you can't take any of it with you, not even 1 cent. Not only will your possessions being able to help you at the time of death, but your mind may be caught up in worries about them. Another reason to prepare ahead of time, right? Who will get what and whether or not they will take proper care of your things. So that will make it difficult to have a peaceful, detached state of mind as you're dying. Contemplate these points and see if you can understand the importance of learning to be less dependent on and attached to material things. So, in this vein, there are other teachings, and she doesn't bring it up in this chapter that I'm aware of, because there's a whole introduction to this chapter that I didn't go through. But um, we should look at, like, when we're in trouble, when we're suffering, or when we have any kind of problem. Let's say when we have a problem, what do we normally turn to help us solve that problem? Okay, we need to think about that. What are we going to for refuge, so to speak, when we have a problem? We call a friend. Do we Google it? Do we um, escape? You know, drink or take drugs or eat or whatever? Do we zone out, scrolling or watching TV? What do we do? What are our coping mechanisms? Really good to consider that. Take a moment to think about that. You know, for me, it's like, if I have a problem, I don't know the answer to it, I'm going to Google it right away, try to figure it out, spend hours, searching and making Excel sheets or whatever, or zoning out. So sort of the two main things for me. You got to think about your own coping mechanisms there. Okay, now when you bring those things to mind, is that going to help prevent death? You know, are you going to be able to Google like how to live forever, how to not die? You know, Lord of Death at doorway. What do I do? It's not going to work. We can't do anything. Is trying to escape and zone out going to help that? Is drinking, taking drugs, whatever, going to help that? Is talking to a friend going to help that? It's going to help. Talking to a friend, this kind of thing can help, but it's not going to prevent death. It's not going to stop it. Like, there's nothing that can stop it. No matter how rich you are, no matter how smart you are, no matter how cute you are, how charming you are, none of that stuff is going to help you at death. Not, I keep using the word help, but what I really mean is prevent. None of that is going to prevent death. It's literally inevitable. The only inevitable thing is impermanence and death. Okay? All right. So going on to the final sub point here. Your own body cannot help. Your body has been your constant companion since birth. You know it more intimately than anything or anyone else. You have cared for it and protected it, worried about it, kept it comfortable and healthy, fed it and cleaned it, experienced all kinds of pleasure and pain with it. It has been your most treasured possession. But now you're dying, and that means you will be separated from it. It will become weak and eventually quite useless. Your mind will separate from it, and it will be taken to the cemetery or crematorium. What good can it possibly do you now? Contemplate the strong sense of dependence and attachment you have to your body and how it cannot benefit you in any way at death. Regret about leaving it and fear will only compound your suffering. So finally, by working on our mind, we can transcend fear, sadness, attachment, and other emotions that make it difficult to die with a peaceful mind. Fear arises because of clinging to the idea of a permanent self. There is no such thing. So this is a delusion that just makes us suffer. If we keep death in mind in an easy, open way, accepting it as a natural and inevitable aspect of life, this clinging will gradually loosen, allowing us to be mindful and make every action positive and beneficial for ourselves and others. And an awareness of death gives us enormous energy to not waste our life, but to live it as effectively as possible. Okay, so I'm going to end here. I'm going to say the closing prayers. For those of you on YouTube, you can download the prayers in the description below. But I will bring them. No, I can't share them. I forgot about that. I mean, I could if I understood how, but. So if you have those prayers, then please bring them up and we will say them together. Why is it not coming up for me? Okay, I don't know why it's not coming up for me. So I have to look on my phone where I have them as well. So we say the long life prayers once in Tibetan, and then go through the other prayers. So beginning with the prayer for the long life, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Kanri wawe kowe shinkan su pendande wa mandu juwene chenre si won ten sing kim so yi shape ke ka pa tu tengye shi om swasti chigme kempe kalon yambaru se chen su se bunda wa nidu du sanam ke no pucho se che yawe shakin tatsu so Om Swasti Selagam Sojana Tinjun Leilun Zinda Se Gudru Pamawan Sangsum Nadre Gapota Dene Lachenten De Shetan Takesho Lama Gongam Sampo Sawade Chidu Kutse Riwa Sawade Trile tashinge pasowa tet namanda drewa me pachingi lo. So this next prayer we read once in Tibetan, once in English, once in Tibetan, the remaining 3 just in English, and then we say the 100-syllable mantra at the end. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonam di tamche sipani, chone neve dranam panche shin, kegana chi balon trupai, sipe sole drowa sho. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may it too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of deities, mantras, and dharmakaya, may I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Now the mantra. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishtadrito Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sawasiri Me Prayatsa Sawakama Sutsame Chitam Shriyam Kuru Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Savatagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajripama Samaya Sattva. Okay, so before you go, I want to make a couple of announcements. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I apologize for the technical difficulties we had earlier. We do have meditation every Saturday morning from 10:30 to 11:30. On the all of those Saturdays are live streamed on YouTube, but the second Saturday of the month we meet also in person at Lakewood Public Library. If you want to know what's going on with Songtsen Gampo, the best way to do that is to sign up for the newsletter. You can see that below. Website is below. We are very, very grateful if you could donate according to your own capacity. Best really is to become a member if you're not already. We have, levels for any budget, and discounts accompany all the different levels. If you want to make a one-time donation, you can do that on our site or on our GoFundMe, which is still active. Nobody likes to ask for money. I hate it every time, but it really is unavoidable. We have bills for Zoom. We have bills for, a lot of different things, plus my own salary. This is my only job. So we try to support that as well. And what else? Oh, yes. So we're starting new classes soon. I wanted to start this month. Not sure it's going to start this month, but for sure in April. So one is studying our teacher's book, Awakening Wisdom, and the other is restarting the 3-year program, Buddhism from the Ground Up. The first year that we will be starting that cycle again on Thursday evenings. So the Rinpoche's book class will be on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8, and the Words of My Perfect Teacher, so that is year 1, will be on Thursdays from 6:30 to 8. We will also be doing another weekend retreat in May. So please keep an eye out for all of that. And I hope you can, join us in the future for class, meditation, whatever other kind of stuff that we do. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Bye.